Relative clauses. In Hebrew, you will often have a little bit, a element, at the end of a relative clause that refers back to the main sentence that the clause modifies. Now, what in the world am I talking about? If you have a sentence, let's imagine this is our sentence running along, and then we have a relative clause, so we'll have some sort of relative pronoun to introduce it. Let's put in asher, for instance. Frequently it's asher. If I can write today. Asher, so that'll be sitting here. And then let's pretend this is our relative clause. Main sentence, relative clause, linked by asher. Maybe I'll pull this down here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, let's show that this is linked here. Excuse my little artwork here. Diagrammatic Hebrew. Main sentence, introduction to relative clause, then there'll be an element here that refers back to the bit that this whole relative clause modifies. In English, we don't do this. In English, this part goes right here with the relative clause. Now let's look at some examples. The reason I'm showing you this, and the reason Ross shows you this, is because it sounds odd in English if you translate this literally. But it's really not that difficult to deal with, as long as you recognize that Hebrew does it differently, and then we just sort of move this element here to where it belongs in English when we want to translate it. And this element here, it's either a pronoun or an adverb, and they're called resumptive. Resumptive pronouns and resumptive adverbs because they resume the flow of thought back up here at the main sentence. Okay, let's look at a real example here. This is getting abstract. Okay. Gedola ha'isha asher katavti la. Okay, here's our asher. So this is introducing our relative clause. So let's look at our main sentence first. Gedola ha'isha. This is woman. Okay, the woman. Now this here, gedola, this is an adjective, right? And we see that it's feminine, and feminine singular, just like the woman is. So that agrees in gender, number. But it does not agree in definite status. There's no hey on the beginning here, and there is here. And it precedes the noun. This is all by way of review. So we know that this is a predicate adjective. So great, and this means great. Great is, verb to be implied, great is the woman. So that's our main sentence. Well, which woman are we talking about? Great is the woman that, or who, or whom, we'll just say any of those for now. Katav is to write. This is perfect with a T at the end, one CS form. I wrote, and this is to her. This is the 3FS ending, right? On the inseparable preposition le. So great is the woman whom I wrote to her. Okay, you see how in English this doesn't make sense. You don't put the to her at the end of your clause, unless you're a very young child learning to speak or something. We would say, great is the woman, and we would take this, and we would put it up here. So let me sort of do that here. For translation purposes, or in English, we would put, that's an arrow there, we would put what Hebrew puts at the end, this resumptive bit, we'd put it up here with this relative clause. Great is the woman to whom I wrote. Finished. Hebrew says, great is the woman whom I wrote to her. And then this brings you back to really here. This is talking about this, right? So, don't get too hung up on this. Once you've seen a few examples, once you read it, it's not a big deal, really. Sometimes discussion on this can be a little overcomplicated, and it doesn't need to be, really. Is this my next example? Yeah. Ze hamakom asher yashav sham. So ze is this, makom is place, this is the place, so that's our main sentence. Let's say that for the moment. This is the place that, yashav is to sit, he sat, it's a perfect, he sat there. This is the place that he sat there. Well, how would we deal with this in English? This is the place, put this up here, where he sat. You can almost just sort of ignore this. You don't need the extra there at the end in English. But you do in Hebrew. Hebrew, this resumptive pronoun here, actually this is an adverb, I guess. Resumptive adverb. That's one of the possibilities, right? Yes, pronouns are adverbs. And this points to this. It's talking about the same thing as makom. It's pointing to that, right? You are resuming your thought now back up here. Okay, let's look at actually example that's very similar, but a real example. This, again, is from Seo, page 106, and it's taken from Exodus 3, verse 5. Hamakom, the place, asher, that, ata, you, masculine singular, omeid, amad is to stand, this is the participial form, masculine singular, omeid, the place that you are standing. Remember, participles have this durative sense to them, that you are standing, alav, that you are standing on it. The place that you are standing on it, admat kodesh hu. Kodesh is holy. Holy ground, it is implied. The place on which you are standing is holy, or it is holy ground. Okay? So again, you just take whatever's going on here in the resumptive, you either drop it off if you don't need it in English, or you tack it up here with a relative pronoun. The place on which, put these two together, you are standing is holy ground. So that is the resumptive pronoun that often comes at the end, resumptive pronoun or resumptive, what was the other one? Adverb. Resumptive element, pronoun or adverb, that comes at the end of relative clauses that links the thought, that resumes the thought, or resumes the discussion back to what that relative clause modifies. And in English, you can either drop it off or you tack it up with the relative pronoun that introduces the clause.